the early hours of September 2019, 21-year-old Keeley Bunker walked through the quiet streets of Tamworth, Staffordshire, accompanied by her childhood friend Wesley Streety. They had just returned from a night out celebrating her recent birthday, a night filled with laughter and music. Keeley trusted Wesley to see her home safely, but as dawn approached, Keeley vanished. Her lifeless body was later discovered partially submerged in a brook, concealed beneath branches in Wigginton Park. The friend entrusted with her safety would soon be unmasked as her killer. Tamworth, Staffordshire, a quiet town known for its historic charm and close-knit community. But on the night of September 18, 2019, beneath the glow of streetlights and the distant hum of passing cars, an unspeakable tragedy was beginning to unfold. Keeley Bunker was full of life. At just 20 years old, she had the world ahead of her. She was described by those who knew her as kind, bubbly, and fiercely loyal, a young woman who always put others before herself. She had recently celebrated her birthday and was preparing to start a new chapter of her life. She had ambitions, dreams, and an excitement for the future. A new job as a teaching assistant awaited her, something she had been looking forward to, the kind of job that perfectly suited her caring and patient nature. But she would never make it to her first day. That evening, Keeley was in high spirits. She had made plans with her best friend, Monique Riggin, for a long overdue night out, a chance to enjoy herself before the responsibilities of adult life truly began. They were going to see H, a rising rap artist, perform at the O2 Institute in Birmingham. It was a night of celebration, of friendship, of music, a night that should have been nothing but fun. Dressed in a lace bodysuit and denim skirt, Keeley was ready to make memories. As she and Monique made their way to the concert, the anticipation built. The atmosphere in the venue was electric. Hundreds of fans singing along, flashing lights illuminating the stage, and the bass reverberating through the crowd. Keeley danced, laughed, and soaked in every moment. It was exactly the kind of night she had hoped for. As the concert came to an end, the two friends weren't quite ready to call it a night. They wanted to keep the celebration going, and that's when they reached out to an old friend, Wesley Streety. Wesley had been a part of Keeley's life for years, a childhood friend, someone who had been there through her teenage years, someone she trusted. There was never a reason to doubt him, never a reason to feel unsafe in his presence. They decided to meet up, and together the three of them headed to Snobs, a popular nightclub in Birmingham. It was just past midnight, and the streets were alive with the energy of other young people making the most of the night. Inside the club, the music was even louder than at the concert. Drinks were flowing, the dance floor was packed, and for Keeley, it was just another part of a perfect evening. Monique, however, was starting to feel tired. She decided to leave the club a little earlier, but Keeley wanted to stay a bit longer. She was still enjoying the night, and Wesley was there to keep her company. It was a decision she made without hesitation. After all, why would she have any reason to worry? She was with a friend. The night was winding down. The streets of Tamworth were silent, the air cool with the first hints of morning creeping in. Keeley Bunker had spent the evening celebrating a night of music, laughter, and memories made with friends. She had danced, she had sung, and she had reveled in the joy of turning 20. At 2:40 a.m., Keeley, along with her best friend Monique Riggin and longtime childhood friend Wesley Streety, hailed a taxi back from Birmingham. The city lights faded behind them as they headed home, exhaustion settling in after an eventful night. The ride was uneventful. Monique, tired but happy, leaned against the window, Keeley scrolling through her phone, and Wesley, quiet, staring out at the dark roads ahead. When they arrived at Monique's house, she turned to Keeley. "You can stay here if you want." It was an offer of safety, of warmth, but Keeley shook her head. "Nah, I need to be home in the morning. Got my interview." She had ambitions, plans, a new job opportunity. She wanted to wake up in her own bed, get ready, and move one step closer to her future. And why wouldn't she feel safe? After all, she wasn't alone. She had Wesley Streety, her friend, by her side. So at around 4 a.m., Keeley and Wesley stepped into the night, heading toward her home. The CCTV cameras caught them walking together near Tamworth Rugby Club at 4:23 a.m. Keeley, in her bright pink dress, the same dress she had worn with excitement just hours earlier, walked beside Wesley. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't looking over her shoulder. She trusted him. As they neared Wigington Park, the streets grew darker, the orange glow of streetlights fading into the thick, looming trees ahead. The silence stretched between them. The laughter of the night had died down. At some point, somewhere between the street and the shadows of the park, everything changed. Keeley didn't know it yet, but she would never make it home. The friend she trusted to keep her safe was about to become her worst nightmare. As the first rays of sunlight stretched across Tamworth on September 19, 2019, a quiet unease settled over Keeley Bunker's family. The morning routine should have been simple: Keeley waking up, getting dressed, heading out for her job interview, one she had been excited about. But Keeley never arrived. Hours passed, and the silence was deafening. Texts went unread. Calls rang through to voicemail. At first, there were rational explanations. Maybe she overslept. Maybe her phone had died. But by midday, those explanations no longer felt possible. Something was wrong. Keeley wasn't someone who would simply disappear. She was responsible, reliable. Her friends described her as someone who always looked out for others, the kind of person who checked in if she knew you were upset. And now no one could reach her. Her parents, Christopher and Debbie Bunker, felt a rising panic. They retraced every step she should have taken that morning. Her bed, untouched. Her belongings exactly where she had left them the night before. Keeley had never made it home. By evening, the unease turned into full-blown fear. This wasn't just a case of a young woman staying out longer than expected. Keeley was missing. Her father, heart-pounding, called the Staffordshire police and reported his daughter's disappearance. Within hours, friends and family spread the word. Posters were printed, social media flooded with pleas for information, and soon, a search party began combing through Tamworth, calling her name into the night air, desperate for an answer that refused to come. One of those searching was Wesley Streetsy, Keeley's childhood friend, the last known person to have seen her alive. He stood alongside the others, concerned, confused, offering to help in any way he could. He told police that after a night out, he had walked Keeley part of the way home. He insisted that he had left her near a telephone box at the junction of Macefield Drive and Wordsworth Avenue. From there, she had supposedly continued on alone. She was fine, he told officers. I don't know what happened after that. At first, his story made sense. Keeley had only a short distance left to walk. But as officers began piecing together the night's timeline, unsettling inconsistencies emerged. Street's demeanor, though outwardly helpful, seemed off. His words carefully measured, his concern rehearsed. He spoke as though he wanted to be believed, not as though he was truly afraid for Keeley's safety. And then came the first contradiction. A piece of CCTV footage, one that should have placed Keeley exactly where Wesley had said he left her, never existed. There was no sign of Keeley walking alone that night. The community pushed forward, refusing to slow down the search. They combed through streets, checked alleyways, knocked on doors. By 9 p.m., Keeley had been missing for nearly 18 hours. The search led them toward Wigington Park, a quiet, open space where children played by day and joggers passed through in the evenings. But that night, the air was heavy, thick with a sense of foreboding. Keeley's uncle, Jason Brown, moved toward the brook, his flashlight flickering across the dark water. Then he saw it. For a split second, time froze. His breath caught in his throat. He stepped closer, pushing aside damp branches and reeds. And there she was. Keeley's body lay partially submerged in the shallow water, hidden beneath foliage, as if someone had tried to erase her from existence. The girl they had been searching for, the girl who had been laughing and celebrating just hours before, now eerily still. Jason screamed. A raw, guttural sound of heartbreak and horror. Others came running, their flashlights converging on the scene. Keeley's father collapsed at the sight of his daughter, the hope he had been clinging to slipping away in an instant. The police arrived quickly, sealing off the area. Detectives and forensic teams swarmed the park, their faces grim as they surveyed the scene. The way Keeley's body had been hidden told them one thing. This was no accident. This was deliberate, and the person responsible had tried to cover their tracks. And then there was Wesley Street, still standing among them, still watching. The boy who had walked beside Keeley's father as if he, too, were desperate to find her. But now, His face had changed. His calm demeanor was beginning to crack. It would only take hours before the truth started to unravel. Upon the tragic discovery of Keeley Bunker's body on September 19, 2019, Staffordshire police launched an intensive investigation to unravel the circumstances surrounding her untimely death. The immediate focus centered on Wesley Streety, a 20-year-old warehouse packer from Tamworth, who was the last known person to have been with Keeley. Street, a childhood friend of Keeley's, initially portrayed himself as a concerned companion, eager to assist in the search efforts. He provided a detailed account to both Keeley's family and the authorities, stating that after leaving Monique Riggins' house around 4 a.m., he and Keeley walked together until they reached a telephone box at the junction of Macefield Drive and Wordsworth Avenue. There, according to Streety, they parted ways, with Keeley continuing alone towards her home. To substantiate his account, Streety accompanied officers on a drive to illustrate the route they purportedly took, pointing out the exact location where they allegedly separated. However, as investigators delved deeper, inconsistencies began to surface. Streety exhibited reluctance when asked to surrender his mobile phone for examination. Raising suspicions about his narrative, the investigative team employed a multifaceted approach, combining technological analysis, forensic science, and traditional detective work to piece together the events of that fateful night. Specialists conducted a thorough examination of Streety's mobile phone data, which contradicted his initial statements. The analysis revealed that instead of heading directly home after allegedly parting ways with Keeley, Street's movements diverted towards Wigington Park, the location where Keeley's body was later discovered. This deviation from his claimed route cast significant doubt on his version of events. Investigators meticulously reviewed surveillance footage from various locations in Tamworth. Crucially, CCTV captured Keeley and Streety walking together near Tamworth Rugby Club at approximately 4:23 a.m., well beyond the point where Street claimed they had separated. This evidence not only undermined his account, but also placed them in close proximity to Wigington Park during the critical time frame. The search teams recovered Keeley's rucksack a short distance from Tamworth Rugby Club, along with Street's bank card, found between the rugby club and the location of Keeley's body. Additionally, Street's jacket discovered in the park was heavily stained on the lower parts of both sleeves with makeup consistent with the type Keeley was wearing that night. A post-mortem examination revealed the presence of Street's DNA on Keeley's body, leading to charges of rape in addition to murder. The autopsy further indicated that Keeley had died from strangulation, with injuries suggesting a violent struggle. Confronted with mounting evidence, Street's narrative evolved multiple times. He first denied any involvement beyond walking Keeley partway home. Upon discovery of inconsistencies, Street claimed that Keeley had fallen and fatally injured herself during playful activity. Later, he alleged that they had engaged in consensual sexual activity in the park, during which he accidentally strangled her by placing his arm around her neck. He admitted to panicking and concealing her body in the brook, returning multiple times to cover her with branches. Throughout the investigation, Streety's shifting accounts and attempts to mislead authorities not only hindered the search for truth, but also deepened the anguish experienced by Keeley's family and friends. His actions underscored a profound betrayal of trust, culminating in a senseless act of violence against someone who had considered him a friend. The comprehensive and meticulous investigative efforts ultimately dismantled Street's fabrications, leading to his conviction and ensuring justice for Keeley Bunker. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as the trial of Wesley Street commenced at Stafford Crown Court in August 2020. The 20-year-old stood accused of the rape and murder of his childhood friend, Keeley Bunker, a case that had sent shockwaves through the community of Tamworth, Staffordshire. The prosecution, led by Jacob Hallam, QC, presented a meticulously constructed case, highlighting the sequence of events and the evidence that pointed unequivocally to Streety's guilt. Inconsistent accounts. Initially, Street claimed that he and Keeley had parted ways near his home, asserting she continued her journey alone. However, as evidence mounted, he altered his narrative multiple times. Ultimately, he alleged that Keeley's death was an accident during consensual sex, a claim the prosecution dismantled as a fabrication. Forensic evidence, a post-mortem examination revealed that Keeley had been raped and strangled, Street's DNA was found on her body, and her makeup was discovered on the lower parts of both sleeves of his jacket, which was found in the digital evidence. Expert analysis of Street's mobile phone data contradicted his initial statements. GPS data showed that he did not make his way to the telephone box and then go home. Instead, he went away from his home and into Wigginton Park. CCTV captured Keeley and Street E by Tamworth Rugby Club at 4:23 a.m. Street E's mobile phone was in the area where Keeley's body was found for about an hour. GPS data showed that the phone was at that location 7 times that day. Prior offenses. The court heard testimonies from 3 other women who accused Street of sexual offenses between 2015 and 2019. In 2015, he raped and sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl. In 2017, he sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl. And in 2019, he raped a 20-year-old woman. These accounts established a disturbing pattern of predatory behavior, undermining any notion that Keeley's death was accidental. Defense's argument. Street's defense team contended that Keeley's death was an unfortunate accident during consensual sex. They argued that panic led him to conceal her body and fabricate his initial accounts. Street claimed that as they walked home that night, they started flirting with each other. He said that Keeley began teasing him. He said that it wasn't like touchy type of flirt or anything. It was just looking at each other in a flirtatious way. He claimed that during sex he put his arm around Keeley's neck and that was how she died. It was an accident. He admitted he hid her body in the pond and went back 5 further times to cover Keeley's body with branches. On August 7, 2020, the courtroom fell silent as Wesley Streety stood to receive his sentence. The young man who had once been Keeley Bunker's childhood friend was now a convicted murderer. Life imprisonment. The words echoed through the chamber, a final confirmation of the horror he had inflicted. Judge Mrs. Justice Carr delivered a scathing verdict, condemning Streety's grotesque and senseless crime, stating that Keeley had been vulnerable, trusting, and entirely unsuspecting. The judge described his persistent lies, deceit, and lack of remorse, emphasizing the betrayal of trust that had led Keeley to her tragic end. Streety would serve a minimum of 30 years before even being considered for parole. For Keeley's family, it was justice, but no sentence could undo the pain of losing her. Outside the courtroom, Keeley's mother, Deborah Watkins, clutched a framed photograph of her daughter, her voice shaking as she spoke to reporters. "Keeley was my little girl. She had her whole life ahead of her. She trusted him. We all did. And he stole everything from her. No sentence will ever be enough." Her words were raw, unfiltered grief, a pain no mother should endure. Keeley's father, Christopher Bunker, stood beside her, struggling to find the words. His silence spoke louder than anything. He had been one of the first to search for Keeley on that fateful day, never imagining he would never see his daughter alive again. The streets of Tamworth, Staffordshire, were lined with mourners in the days following the sentencing. Hundreds gathered in Keeley's memory, lighting candles and laying flowers at her favorite park, Wigginton Park, where she was so cruelly discarded. Pink ribbons, Keeley's favorite color, were tied to trees, fences, and lampposts, a symbol of love and remembrance. Local resident Lucy Jenkins shared the heartbreak of the town. Tamworth is a close-knit community. We all knew Keeley. She was kind, bubbly, full of life. This has shaken us all to the core. We can't believe this happened, and by someone we all trusted. The case resonated beyond the town. Strangers from across the UK and beyond sent messages of condolences, expressing their horror that a young woman could meet such a brutal fate at the hands of a trusted friend. Keeley's murder forced a difficult conversation, one that every woman, every parent, and every friend has had to ask themselves. Who can we trust? She wasn't walking home alone that night. She had done everything right, stayed with friends, made sure she had someone to walk with, trusted a person she had known for years. And still, she never made it home. For Keeley's family, the grief is a life sentence of its own. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone will pass without her. Her mother still keeps her room exactly as she left it, her clothes folded neatly, her favorite perfume untouched on the dresser. Tamworth will never forget Keeley Bunker. In the aftermath of the case, there were renewed calls for greater awareness of sexual violence and personal safety. Local authorities increased community safety measures, more street lighting, additional CCTV cameras, and educational programs to help young women recognize red flags in friendships and relationships. Support groups formed for survivors of assault, encouraging them to speak out. "We Believe You" became a rallying cry, ensuring that no one else would suffer in silence. Keeley's family began working with advocacy groups, pushing for stronger protections against predatory behavior and better resources for victims of sexual violence. Wesley Streety was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 30 years. But for Keeley's family, no sentence could undo the pain of losing their daughter, their sister, their friend. Keeley Bunker had her entire future ahead of her, a new job, dreams of traveling, a life filled with possibilities. Instead, her trusting nature led her into the hands of a predator she had known since childhood. Her murder sent shockwaves through Tamworth, a painful reminder that sometimes danger comes disguised as a friend. Her family now fights to raise awareness, ensuring Keeley's story is never forgotten. What do you think? Could anything have been done to prevent this tragedy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to hear about another chilling case where trust was shattered in the most horrifying way, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories.